It appears to be the worst kept secret in video games that Donkey Kong Bonanza is developed primarily by the Tokyo-based 3D Mario team EPD8. But are they working alone? Does this augur an 8-year wait for the next 3D Mario? And what does this mean for the future of both Donkey Kong and 3D Mario? Before we begin, let's quickly just explain why it seems to me that EPD8 are 90% certain to be developing this title. Long ago, there were leaks and rumours pertaining to an EPD8 Donkey Kong, and once you look at the game, the similarities with Odyssey become obvious. Instead of moons, we appear to have bananas, but from the art style to the fonts, the game feels EPD8-ish. Plus, there just aren't any other Nintendo teams in Japan that have experience of Donkey Kong, and the EPD8 team has a fondness for bold, innovative approaches like the destructible terrain, something I've explored more fully in my comprehensive deep dive on the team recently. Now, this doesn't mean that they are necessarily working alone. Nintendo Software Technology, the Redmond-based team who are behind F-099 and Mario vs. Donkey Kong, has some history of teaming up with EPD8 previously. They co-developed Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, albeit their work was probably focused on the 3D World port rather than the original side game. Before that, NST had a similar role on the Switch version of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. It seems unlikely that they have the capacity to be full co-developers of a major title like Donkey Kong, but they may well have supported development. Plus, of course, there are multiple studios that often do lend a helping hand to Nintendo's major teams: Toei, Bandai Namco, Eighting, and more. Nevertheless, it seems as though Bonanza is a fairly extensive endeavor from the Tokyo Titans. It is priced at $70, which suggests that it might not be quite as vast as a proposition compared to Mario Kart World, but it's still a major return for Donkey Kong. It still uses a bold new mechanic, and it's positioned in a key slot at the time of writing, pegged as the second major game release for Switch 2, assuming that the spare late June slot doesn't get nabbed by something Metroidy. It may not be the scale of Super Mario Odyssey, but I think it's going to be much more significant than Captain Toad. So, if it took 8 years to get this title out of the door, does this mean that the next big 3D Mario will be coming to a console near you in 2033? I doubt it, but let's have a look at the logistics of this. First, let me preface all this by saying that there are really no hard facts to go on, and so this is highly speculative even by the standards of this channel. I will take you through the dots I'm joining, but everything is so contingent that it really is deep speculation. Still, I want to explore what the last few years may have been like for EPD8 and where things may go next. First of all, EPD8 has already proven the capacity to make multiple games concurrently or near concurrently. They released Captain Toad Treasure Tracker the year after Super Mario 3D World, and they put out Super Mario Odyssey less than 3 years after that, despite that game clearly being a major effort from the group. In recent years, the only work from them we've seen has been Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. They are, in short, well overdue. Now, Donkey Kong Bonanza does look like a pretty major game that a lot of effort has been put into, and the fact that it has been rumoured for so long suggests that it may even have been a game that was completed or at least deep in development some time ago. Some people have speculated that this could make it a game that was originally destined for the first Switch, but I'm not quite so sure. The mechanic of having a fully destructible terrain seems to me like it would be quite a technical challenge to pull off, and while at some point they may have thought that they could make it work for the original Switch, this game reminds me more of Pikmin on the GameCube, a title that is used to demonstrate the power of a new system in pure gameplay terms as opposed to simply technical specifications. Nintendo doesn't make a fuss much about 4K, HDR, DLSS, and other tech buzzwords, but if a game can feature scores of sprites on screen to make a completely new kind of game, well, that's how Nintendo shows its interest in power, by what it does to create games. Having said that, if there were any credibility to the rumours of an internal delay to Switch 2, then they must have had some games finished and ready for some time, and my hunch is that Donkey Kong Bonanza may well have been one of these, and we'll come back to why in a bit. We also have to consider how these projects came about. We know that Tears of the Kingdom started life off as DLC for Breath of the Wild, but grew and grew in scope until it became its own game, with a lot of development time required for the complex and distinctive Ultra Hand mechanic. Donkey Kong Bonanza strikes me as likely having originated in a similar way. Consider that Odyssey, a game that seemed crying out for paid DLC, that was released during an era where practically every major first-party AAA title had DLC, didn't have any paid DLC. Consider also that this shows the appearance of being built following the same broad principles as Super Mario Odyssey in terms of its aesthetic and stylistic choices. Consider further that there was no original Donkey Kong game on the entirety of the Switch's lifespan for all those 8 years, despite their clear, long held interest in reviving Donkey Kong, despite the 2025 theme park. And also consider that the Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle game in 2018 used its own DLC to put Donkey Kong front and center. Finally, and this is a bit of a reach but bear with me, consider Nintendo's decision to make 2013, the year after their last console launch, the year of Luigi as a way to promote that character and make him more prominent, and then think about how barren 2018 was. With Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and Super Mario Odyssey DLC featuring Donkey Kong, well, now it feels plausible that they could have raised the profile of Donkey Kong very significantly if they had used Odyssey as a launchpad. It is pure supposition that the game started as Odyssey DLC or even as an Odyssey sequel, but this would also have kept the bulk of the EPD8 staff in deep development through 2017 and 2018, while the more senior staff, such as Kenta Motokura and Yoshiaki Koizumi, considered the fate of 3D Mario. 35% of the core staff of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury also had received credits on Super Mario Odyssey. Because they didn't credit Bowser's Fury by job titles, and in fact they just bundled all the credits together into one big list, it's difficult to say too much about the staff makeup, but it is self-evidently a smaller group than those who worked on Odyssey. Moreover, we know that Nintendo has itinerant development talent who swing to supporting big development pushes at any one time. We saw numbers swelling to support Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, and it seems quite plausible to me that a lot of the staff could have gone to work on Mario Kart World and thereafter to the next Super Mario after Tears of the Kingdom wrapped up major development in 2021 or 2022, a time frame we know to be the case as they mentioned that they spent a year polishing the title to remove bugs and to optimize. The development cycle seems to be that Nintendo start with their small core groups for a game, often just a handful of people who are piloting ideas indefinitely, and then they have an intensive period of development, bringing in a large number of staff for the art, music, coding, and other jobs that require a lot of effort, but within the existing game framework. Now, the Tears of the Kingdom leads mentioned that the whole group focused on polishing and finalizing the game, but I suspect this referred to the core Tears of the Kingdom group rather than the many people who they brought over for shorter periods of time. The place where it is easiest to see this in action is in the EPD5 credits, which I've deep dived separately, where the Splatoon 2 group moved to Animal Crossing New Horizon more or less intact, while the core group remained behind, focusing on the next Splatoon game. Though Splatoon 3 seemed to have a development group with more newer faces, suggesting that by this point the Splatoon and Animal Crossing groups were developing into independent entities, something I fully expect to continue into the future. So what am I suggesting happened with EPD8? Put the case that a core group stuck with Super Mario Odyssey to work on DLC, while another, smaller group went off to Blue Sky think up a prototype for a new open-world style Mario game. Along the way, they realized one of their prototypes could easily become a side game for 3D World, something that would be good news as Mario's 35th anniversary was going to be an event that Nintendo would want to highlight. By 2020, Bowser's Fury had been finalized, and Donkey Kong Bonanza had far outgrown its DLC roots, with a technically complex core mechanic that would test the Switch 1 to its limits, but not, dare I say, a Switch Pro. Again, digging into the murk of rumours is often unhelpful, but there was so much smoke about an abandoned Switch Pro, and there is a concentration of major titles that ended up in 2022 and 2023, but pre-COVID, which could have come that little bit sooner, and which would be consistent with a game lineup for a Switch Pro. Splatoon 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Remember also that both the 3DS and in its own way the DS with the DSi did receive mid-generation console upgrades which were slightly more powerful than their predecessors. Now, I doubt Bonanza would ever have become Pro exclusive, and while Nintendo has done this kind of thing on occasion, I really don't think they would have hurt Donkey Kong sales by making it paywalled behind a major new system upgrade. Still, if Bonanza missed out on being a DLC game, and then missed out on leveraging the Switch Pro's power, how long could it have been in development? Long enough to create that long desert of Donkey Kong activity that is unprecedented in Nintendo's recent history. Not since before Donkey Kong Country was created have we ever gone so long between new Donkey Kong entries, of some description at least, than we have had in the Switch era. In this time, it is clear that the group would have developed as a separate concern, and they would have had the time to work at scale, to the point where I believe that there really are two distinctive groups working at EPD8, one with an experience of Donkey Kong, and one who have been working all this time on Mario. As for the rest of that EPD group then, they could also have been working on their main bread and butter, on Mario. Another precedent in favour of two games from EPD dropping soon together is that EPD 10 released both Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Pikmin 4 in 2023. In the case of Pikmin 4, there was heavy development support from Eighting, which allowed them to meet deadlines on both titles, even though historically fans have had to settle with the two franchises being an either-or proposition in any given period of time. Therefore, by 2021, they could have had a largely complete Donkey Kong Bonanza, a 3 to 4 year project whose completion would account for widespread rumours of an EPD8 Donkey Kong game years ago, since I assume most of these leaks come during the testing and localization phase. So, from 2021, the team would have had all their guns trained on the next Mario, with the experience of Bowser's Fury under their belts as a test, and with the benefit of the Bonanza team now piling in as well. Here's the problem. With a Switch 2 anticipated originally perhaps for 2024, it would be very tight for the launch window. Super Mario Galaxy arrived a fair time after Wii launched, but A, they got very lucky out of the gate with the success of that console, which was after all tied more to their blue sky wider audience strategy, and so it was a different era where their success was tied far less to the success or failure of the Mario IP. And B, as my EPD8 deep dive recounts, there was a lot of pressure on the team to get the game to release sooner than it ultimately did. If the next Mario game was conceived and ramped up into full development in 2021, let's draw some comparisons. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom began work in 2018 and was more or less done by 2022 for a 2023 release. If the next Mario is a similar endeavour, we can expect that right now it is basically done, but requires a good deal of testing and editing to make sure it's truly the quality product it is going to need to be as one of the major AAA first-party titles of the new generation. One look at Mario Kart World and I think it only confirms the direction that we are heading in. This is going to be a huge and open Mario. Now, the question then becomes, when do we see this game? Plan A surely has to be March 2026. They will have some kind of 40th anniversary showcase for Mario this September, and giving a 6-month window on a new game would be perfect. If they went earlier, they would only eat into the attention giving to Donkey Kong Bonanza, which would become just the entree to the far more substantial title to come. This way, though, they can make a big deal of Bonanza and then a couple of months later tease the new thing. But, and it is a big but, will the game be ready? It's not the end of the world, it is not. The first Super Mario Bros. Movie had in the run up the exact opposite of what you might instinctively expect, a real lack of new Mario titles. I think in retrospect they wanted to leverage the vast Switch library of Mario titles and sell them as new to the Mario audience that were discovering the plumber for the first time as they progressed from the film to the Switch. And to be honest, there's a lot of scope for that again. The Switch 2 will already have Mario Kart World as a Mario exclusive, and I greatly suspect that Super Mario Bros. Wonder will turn up with a big Plus game bolted on to shore up the 2025 season and raise the profile of that game again. The great thing about the Plus games for Nintendo is that one piece of advertising serves two purposes. They promote Switch titles to the bulk of their audiences, but they also promote Switch 2 and its great features. Plus, the sunk cost effect of people already owning the titles means that the add-ons, relatively inexpensive in the context of all the other prices, make a tempting motivation for people to transfer to the Switch 2 ecosystem at some point. Apart from Super Mario Party Jamboree and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, it seems that games like Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, where I understand that data mining has confirmed a 4K mode, and potentially Mario and Luigi Brothership, and in particular Princess Peach Showtime, could benefit from extra content, and the timeline would fit as the games released about a year ago. Add in Yoshi's Crafted World and a plus game for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, both characters who are likely to feature in the film and who Nintendo would like to have games to promote on the Switch 2, and there is an absolute sea of content that they could generate to make that 8-month window between the September Direct and the Mario movie release very fully formed indeed. Methods that leverage their existing content big time that would slot in amongst bigger Switch 2 offerings to the extent that it would feel like wall-to-wall game releases. If they wanted to, if they needed to, they could bypass a 3D Mario this financial year and have the next Mario launch later in 2026. One option would be a Tears of the Kingdom style slot in the summer, with trailers abound in front of the movie. Or they could even push it until October, the traditional Mario slot. This would match the pattern of Super Mario Bros. Wonder releasing after the movie, and it would make the 2026 holiday lineup incredibly strong, with very likely a 1-2 punch of Mario in October and Pokemon Gen 10 in November. Two mega evergreens back to back. Now, let's be completely clear. If they needed time to push it later, Nintendo would give the team that time. It would hurt them in the short term, but Nintendo have shown time and time again that they will commit to quality over expedience in their top franchises at least. Now, do you remember back last summer when there was gossip that the system was delayed to make sure that games were ready for it? Again, I don't know if there was any truth to that, except insofar as the later you push a console, then of course you're going to have more games for it if you keep developing those games all the while. But if they thought there was a chance that the next 3D Mario would miss not just a 2024 launch year for the Switch, but also 2025, well, in that case, it makes a lot of sense why they may have felt that they needed to slow their roll. Other systems have been criticized for a lack of AAA games to justify a purchase, and while Mario Kart is clearly huge, that will only take them so far. Without a mainline Zelda and a mainline Mario, I think the gossip would grow that maybe Nintendo just doesn't have the depth of games, and this would be corrosive. I don't expect that now, though. I think the new game will have had a substantial development period. I think Donkey Kong Bonanza may well have been locked down a while ago, and even if there is no Switch 2 Mario in March, I think they will have plenty of backup options in place. Worst case scenario, 90% likely, we see a 3D Mario release by the end of the 2026-27 financial year, but I'd say 70% it's no later than next October, and probably 50% the single likeliest option that it is before the end of the 2025-2026 financial year, quite possibly in the March slot where they often like to have a significant game. But what of the Bonanza developers? I figure that like EPD10 and EPD5, there may well now be a core team which can be working on ideas for 3D Donkey Kong going forward. They know they want to exploit the Donkey Kong IP long term, and this is the best way to do that, to continue to make amazing games with DK in the lead. They don't need to do 2D games because they already have the Donkey Kong Country series, and I do expect that eventually Retro will jump back on it, even if it's only a Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze Plus game. But once the major development work on Mario is wrapped up, there is the potential for a lot of the art, sound, and programming staff who aren't required for Splatoon, Animal Crossing, and other major future projects to come back to work on the next Donkey Kong, especially, of course, if there is a DK film in the offing for the next 6 to 8 years, which has to be highly likely. I don't know whether we're at the stage yet where DK has his own permanent group working on the franchise, irrespective of other concerns. Even 2D Zelda and 2D Mario have had their teams diverted to other projects over the years, and it may well be that a smaller palate cleanser game, a Captain Toad perhaps, or a title centered around Peach or Pauline, would be more likely. At the very least, a Captain Toad Treasure Tracker Plus game has to be in the offing sometime this generation. However, I am sure that long term, the company wants to get to the stage where, like 3D Zelda and 3D Mario, there are bespoke teams dedicated to its most vital game series and its most prominent IP at all times, and this would include 3D Donkey Kong. For more on EPD8, this video has the full story. Please also check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast. Thank you so much.